Hello and welcome. I'm Tom, and it's truly great to have you with us today.
All right.
We're going to delve into some really compelling and, well, let's be honest, quite complex topics.
And I'm Amy. Yeah, looking forward to connecting some of these threads. Today, we're looking at a stack of sources, mostly a YouTube transcript, actually, that offers let's say, a distinctly sharp view on the war in Ukraine.
Right. And not just the war, but also this surprising global rearmament it seems to have kicked off.
Exactly. And also the intricate political and economic stuff playing out right here in Poland.
So our mission, like always, is to wade through the details, pull out the really important bits, and give you that, well-informed understanding.
Without all the noise and overload, think of it as getting up to speed quickly but properly, hopefully with a few aha moments along the way.
Yeah. We've basically got three main themes today. First, the potential, and it's a big potential end to the Ukraine conflict.
Second, this strange paradox. Why is everyone arming up so intensely if peace talks are supposedly happening?
And third, the ongoing political and economic battles inside Poland itself. Okay, let's start unpicking this first one. So, the big question. Is the war in Ukraine actually finally winding down? Our source points to two major recent events suggesting maybe, but with some really big caveats.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the context the source emphasizes. I mean, most people remember February 24, 2022, the start of the full-scale invasion.
Right.
But the source stresses, the roots go back to 2014, the Maidan events. And crucially, there's apparently a real shot at peace back in April 2022 in Istanbul.
Istanbul, right. I remember hearing something about that.
An agreement was like right there, ready to sign, the source claims. But then the British PM at the time, Boris Johnson, apparently went to Kiev and, well, the deal just collapsed.
Wow. And since that collapse,
Yeah.
the human cost, it's hard to even grasp.
It's immense. Hundreds of thousands dead on both sides. Our source gives some, frankly, shocking estimates. 750,000 Ukrainian troops, 900,000 Russian troops involved currently.
So that's almost World War scale, like the source says.
Exactly. Which brings us to the first big recent thing the source highlights, that Trump-Putin meeting in Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay. What did the source say about that?
Well, it described a very, quote, friendly atmosphere. Red carpet for Putin, they apparently rode in the same limo.
Diplomatic sigils.
Suggesting well, a certain level of understanding.
Perhaps. And connecting this, the source says Putin's main demand in those talks was a full, legally binding peace treaty, not just a ceasefire.
Why the insistence on a treaty, though?
Ah, well, that's key. According to the source, Putin was worried a simple ceasefire would just give Ukraine and its allies time to rearm, regroup, and start fighting again later. He wanted finality, not a pause.
Makes sense from that perspective. So Trump's comments afterwards were vague.
Yeah, vague but optimistic. Like, most issues agreed, just minor details left. Classic Trump, maybe. But then came the second big meeting the source focuses on.
Which was?
Trump gathering European leaders in Washington. So you had leaders from Germany, France, Italy, Finland.
NATO head Mark Rutte was there, and the European Commission chief Ursula von der Leyen. And interestingly, von der Leyen claimed Zelensky had invited them.
So what was Europe's role here? According to the source, were they equal partners?
Not according to this source, no. It suggests it was, quote, a big slap in the face. Basically, Trump summoning them as junior partners to tell them what's what.
Ouch. So a diminished role for Europe on the world stage.
That's the implication. The source even draws a parallel to how China apparently treated von der Leyen as a mere official before, suggesting a similar dynamic here.
And Poland in all this, any mention.
Conspicuously absent, according to the source. Neither PM Tusk nor the president were invited. The implication being they're seen as subordinate to Berlin and Washington anyway.
Okay, and the outcome of this Washington meeting, what was the big takeaway?
Well, from Putin's viewpoint, the source argues, the absolute key outcome was von der Leyen committing to buy $100 billion worth of American weapons for Ukraine.
$100 billion. Funded by?
By the EU, using EU funds. So this directly feeds into that fear Putin apparently had, right? That any pause just means more weapons pour in.
So it kind of confirms his suspicion from that perspective.
Exactly what the source argues. It potentially fuels the conflict, even while peace is being discussed.
So this puts President Zelensky in a really tough spot, doesn't it?
An incredibly difficult spot. Our source suggests a full peace treaty, one that basically accepts Russian control over Crimea, Donbass, Luhansk. That would be an absolute catastrophe for him, personally and politically.
Like catastrophic.
Because, the source argues, it ends his ability to, maneuver, manage the narrative, keep the war effort going. It exposes the failure to achieve his stated goals.
Which could mean
His downfall. Either he flees Ukraine, the source mentions potential Anglo-Saxon intelligence help, citing alleged offshore accounts, or faces a much bleaker end. The source even mentions Soviet-era methods for leaders who caused huge losses.
grim stuff.
Yeah, very grim. And amidst all this high-level maneuvering, the human cost just keeps mounting. It's vital we don't lose sight of that. The source reminds us, Ukraine had just over 30 million people before the war. Now, almost 10 million directly impacted.
10 million.
Over 6.5 million fled the country, about 1.5 million to Poland, the rest scattered everywhere, and over 3 million are displaced inside Ukraine.
It's just staggering. Even if the fighting is, say, 1,300 kilometers away from Riza Sushi, like the source points out, the impact displacement law, it's immense for millions.
That's the reality of war. Ordinary people losing everything.
Okay, so that's the picture on the peace front. Complicated, fragile, maybe even contradictory, which leads perfectly into our next point, this paradox of rearmament.
Right. If peace is supposedly on the table, why is everyone gearing up for, well, seemingly for more conflict?
That $100 billion U.S. arms deal for Ukraine funded by Europe is one big piece.
A huge piece. And it really makes you question the motives, doesn't it? Are leaders genuinely pushing for peace, or are there other agendas driving these massive military spends?
Exactly. And the source points to something even bigger, the EU's Rearm Europe plan.
Yeah, this sounds enormous. Can you break that down?
Okay, so according to the source, two parts. First, the European Commission borrows 150 billion euros
Okay.
and gives that directly to European arms manufacturers. Then, part two, individual EU countries are supposed to raise another 650 billion euros.
Whoa, 650 billion. How?
By increasing their own national debts. And that money then gets funneled mainly into the German, French, and British arms industries.
So a total of 800 billion euros potentially flowing into weapons manufacturing.
That's the figure the source presents. And what's really interesting, or maybe concerning, depending on your view,
Go on.
is that the Polish arms industry, according to the source, is largely cut out of this, despite having capacity.
So it's not just about defense, there's an economic angle.
That's exactly what the source suggests, that these funds are meant to, quote, reanimate the German, French, and British economies, which it claims are struggling under Green Deal policies.
So less about immediate war, more about a massive financial stimulus package disguised as defense spending, a money grab, as the source puts it.
That's the argument presented. The source even makes a pretty stark comparison to the Wehrmacht when talking of a potential German-led European army. Very
Yeah.
provocative.
Very. Okay, so that's the big picture. What about closer to home? In Poland? Any worrying signs there?
Well, yeah. The source mentions PM Tusk, after meeting the head of British intelligence, MI6, issued a warning. He said Poland could face a very dangerous situation within 18 months.
Did he say what kind of situation?
No, kept it vague.
Yeah.
But coming from a prime minister right after that kind of meeting, it makes you pay attention.
Absolutely. It begs the question, what are they preparing for?
And then there's this other detail the source flags. Warsaw announced a tender for 120 new city buses, diesel buses.
Okay, cities replace buses all the time. What's the catch?
The specifications. They must be designed for mass evacuation and be quickly convertible to transport stretchers.
Stretchers.
The wounded or the dead. That's what the source states the specs imply.
Wow. That's chilling, especially given Warsaw's big push for zero-emission buses before.
Exactly. It's a jarring shift. The source compares them to old Polish Odyssey H9 buses from decades ago, also designed for potential wartime stretcher transport. Thankfully, those were never needed for that.
Let's hope these new ones aren't either. Just an over-prepared precaution, perhaps.
We can only hope. But it definitely adds to this unsettling picture of preparation. Okay, so beyond the international stage and these military preparations, there's the domestic situation in Poland. Our source calls it the Polish War.
Yeah, the source is pretty blunt, isn't it? Views both the former PM, Morawiecki, and the current PM, Tusk, as pests. Equally bad for the country in its view.
So impartiality isn't its strong suit, but it does highlight some recent clashes, like President Naraki's vetoes.
Right. The first big one was the electricity price freeze bill. Sounds good, right? Capping price hikes for households for a few months.
Seems popular.
But the source claims the real purpose hidden inside was a wind turbine law. championed by Tusk's coalition and green activists, as the source calls them.
And this law would do what?
Allow wind turbines to be built much closer to people's homes in Poland. The source points fingers at German turbine manufacturers, suggesting their projects in Germany aren't profitable without subsidies, so they need new markets.
So Naraki vetoed it, stopping that part.
He did, as he'd apparently promised. A clear conflict there, and the source expects more vetoes.
Like what?
Well, first, the Ukraine support law. Poland spent, according to the source, over $45 billion on Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees since 2022.
It's a huge amount. Military aid, healthcare, social benefits like the 800+ program.
Exactly. The source thinks a veto would be smart to force a real talk with Ukraine about the costs, the terms, the effectiveness of all this aid.
Okay. And the second expected veto?
An excise tax hike on alcohol and cigarettes. Tusk's side says it's to reduce consumption, public health.
But the source is skeptical.
Very. It argues that history shows these kinds of tax hikes just push things underground more, smuggling illegal production. Doesn't really cut consumption, doesn't reliably raise state revenue either, so it questions the real motive.
Interesting. Then there was the fuss about the president's car.
Ah, yes, the macabre shitstorm, as the source colorfully put it. President Naraki seen in a new armored BMW 7 Series.
And Tusk's supporters jumped on it. Extravagant spending.
Immediately. But here's the thing the source points out. These high-security vehicles for the president, PM, etc., they're ordered way in advance. Months, maybe longer.
Why so long?
Custom armor, integrated communications. It takes time. They're ordered by the Government's Protection Service, the SOP, not like buying off the lot.
Okay, so the source has a different theory.
A provocative one. It suggests the car was probably ordered by Tusk's people months ago, expecting a different president, maybe Trzaskowski, to win. A kind of gift to keep the new president cooperative.
Whoa. So the outrage is misdirected in this view.
Completely. And the source ties it to a historical pattern in Poland. Leaders always getting luxuries, while regular people struggle, even with basics like transport.
Okay, quite a controversial take on the BMW affair. Let's shift to the economy for our last segment. Again, cutting through the political spin.
And again, our source is critical of pretty much everyone, sees both the last government and the current one as damaging.
It points out the irony of former PM Morawiecki criticizing the economy now.
Right, after overseeing huge debt increases himself. Pandemic money printing, hidden liabilities off budget. Now he's concerned.
So in response, Tusk's supporters are highlighting better numbers now, aren't they?
Yeah, they contrast current figures, say 3.4% inflation, 3.4% inflation, and basically zero growth, 0.1%.
Looks like a clear improvement on paper.
It does. But here's the critical insight the source wants you, the listener, to grasp. What do these numbers really mean for your wallet?
Okay, tell us.
3.4% inflation is way better than 18%, obviously, but it still means your money is losing value. Prices are still going up, just slower.
So it's not a gain, it's just losing less quickly.
Exactly. The source puts it bluntly. It's still taking money out of your pocket just with a smaller spoon. Your purchasing power is still going down.
That's such a key point. Lower inflation isn't the same as no inflation or deflation. Your money still buys less than it did before.
Precisely. And that's the economic truth that the source wants people to remember, especially when politicians are boasting about bringing inflation down. It's still erosion, just slower.
A really important takeaway for evaluating those economic headlines.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what really stands out from our sources today is this incredibly complex mix, isn't it? You've got international diplomacy, national security concerns, domestic politics.
All tangled up with huge amounts of money.
Exactly. Huge financial stakes. And these signals of peace talks are just so clouded by this massive push for rearmament, it really forces you to ask,
what does peace actually mean in this context?
Yeah. And who really benefits from all this money flowing into weapons, even as they talk about ending the fighting?
That's definitely a provocative thought to leave everyone with, something to mull over and, maybe bring up in your own conversations.
For sure.
Well, thank you for your attention today. We hope you found this useful, and you can subscribe to our podcast if you like it.
And we'll look forward to digging into more sources with you next time.
See you next time.